have got the capacity to earn incredible amounts of money. And I know some people it's not about the money, but guess what? If you're a wealthy person, you're in a much better position to help other people. So my encouragement to you is seize this opportunity that we have in the market, these great opportunities we're going to have to get in, buy great cash flowing assets, build up your cash flow, and then you could choose how you spend the rest of your life. What I want to talk about now is now a good time to buy when prices are so high? This is a question I'm asked very, very frequently, and it's a great question as well, and especially because some people think the market might crash, some think it's going to just level out, some people think it's going to keep going up. So great question to look at, and that's what we're going to look at now. Now, to do this, I want to take you back in time a little bit, because very often we feel the prices are high, and they are high compared to where they were. And we sometimes say, well, will they ever get as high as they were before? So what I'd love you to do is think about your first property purchase, probably your home. Now, if you don't have a home yet, we have some younger people here, if you don't have a home, well, maybe think about your parents when they bought their first home, okay? But if you've got a property yourself or have had a home, think about when you bought your very first one. My first property was back in 1995 when I started work at Cadbury's. And what I want you to do is think about when did you buy your first? So write this down in your workbook. Actually write it down. Just think about it and write it down, okay? And I want you to think about how much you bought it for as well. And my first one was £48,500. Oops, 48,500. And it was a no money down deal and a below market value purchase. Isn't that pretty cool for your first property? No money down, below value. Well, the value, it was on the market for 49,000, and I got 500 off the price. I was pretty happy with that. Paid for my legal costs. I thought I was pretty clever. Below market value. And it was no money down because I had no money. So what I had to do was I borrowed 5% deposit from my grandmother. And it wasn't a gift. It was a loan. So I paid it back with interest. She wanted to help me, but she didn't want to give it to me. So she wanted to teach me about value of money, which was a great lesson. So she was my first kind of joint venture, well, private investor, if you like. And that was good because I had no money, and I just really wanted to get this house. And I rented out some of the rooms in this house to my friends who were still at university, 2 of the rooms, and I pretty much lived for free. It paid the mortgage and the bills. And I started saving my salary at Cadbury's, and also I had a part-time business running student nightclubs. So in a few years, I was able to buy my next house. So in 1998, I bought my second house. And I started looking around, and I was living in Selly Oak, which is just next to Birmingham University, which is the next suburb to Bourneville, which is where Cadbury's are based. So I could walk or cycle to work each day, because I've got such bad eyesight, I can't drive. I can't see a license plate at 25 meters, so I can't even get a license, right? It's that. If you see me reading, I'm reading like this, okay? So I always walk or cycle. Cycle is probably dangerous, but still, it was good fun. So anyway, but I kind of, after a few years, you know, it was great living close to students at first, but I kind of thought, I don't really want to be around students anymore, and also want to be a bit closer to work. So I started looking in Bourneville, which is where Cadbury's is based. I said Bourneville chocolate, right? Bourneville means new town, because Cadbury's created this whole new town, and they were Quakers, and they believed in providing for the community. They built housing and schools and swimming pools. It was amazing what they did, really. So anyway, I wanted to buy in Bourneville, and I looked around, and in 1998, prices in Bourneville for the same kind of house that I'd bought just a few years before in Selly Oak were about £80,000. And I remember thinking, 80, that's ridiculously expensive. Who's ever going to pay that? It's way too much, a lot more than it ever has been. And I decided not to buy that. I bought another suburb, which is Selly Park, which is kind of adjacent to Selly Oak and Bourneville, just a bit further from the university. So I bought a house in 98 for $55,000, okay? And it was actually a bigger house than my first house. I think this had probably actually gone up more than that, but I didn't revalue that house. Well, I didn't need to. I didn't know what I know now. And the problem is, no one ever teaches us this stuff. Unless you're lucky enough to maybe have family members or friends who invest in property, none of us work this out ourselves. They certainly don't. I don't know about you, but I must have missed the wealth creation lessons at school. Did you? I don't know. I didn't go to them, right? So I didn't know this stuff. And actually, this had probably gone up more than that, but I didn't know. This was probably the same as the one in South. But I wasn't looking in Selly Oak because I wanted to move out. So I was just looking in Bourneville. So I probably didn't know how much this has gone up, right? And you're the same. You will have some of your investments. You don't know quite how much they've gone up. I recommend those who have properties, get some valuations. Maybe look at some remortgages. There's loads of equity you could use in those to grow your portfolio. So anyway, I found another house. It was $55,000. Seemed like much better value to me, okay? And I like to ask this question. When you bought that first house, whenever it was for you, did it seem like a lot of money to you at the time? Stick your hand up if it did. Yeah, and on screen, stick your hand up if your first home, your first boat seemed really expensive at the time. Yep, okay, that's most of us, right? Because it does. Most of us push ourselves to try and get the most expensive house we can, the biggest house we can, based on our resources. And obviously, when you buy your own home, it is very much based on your income. Remember, when you buy an investment property, it's not so much about you, it's more about the tenants and the income generated from that property. So anyway, I remember thinking that this in Selly Park was a much better deal because everything else seemed to be like $80,000, way too expensive. That's massively overpriced, okay? So it did feel really high, and prices will have seemed high when you got your first one. And people who are coming into the market now to start investing, you're going to feel, oh, prices seem really high, and they are high compared to where they've been previously. So that's absolutely the case. However, what I want you to do is think back to that first property you bought and think, how much do you think that property is worth now? Now, you might own that first property you bought. You might have sold it many, many years ago. But just think, what do you think it's worth? So my house, and in 2020, I got it remortgaged and valued. And the value had gone up and came down a bit in 2008, 2009, and gone up again. But what happens in the UK on average, you've got to be careful of averages, as Mike said yesterday, but on average throughout the UK, historically, for about the last 60 years, property prices have doubled every 10 years, on average. Not everywhere, not every property, but that's the average. Some places have done it quicker than that, but that's the average in the UK. So let's work through this together. Let's make the maths really simple. Let's say this was 50,000. If the prices had doubled and doubled again, how much would it be? So if a price is doubled from 50, goes up to 100, yeah. If it doubles again, up to 200. And if it doubles again, it should go to 400. Everyone get the maths there? Yeah. So in a few years' time, it'll be 2025, and I will have owned this 30 years. So if that's true, it should have doubled again, and doubled again. Doubled 3 times, right? In 2020, the valuation, and this house it was my very first house. I'm just waiting to do a refurb on it at the moment because it's been a student house. It needs a lot of, I'm going to do a big refurb on it. So, but even in the condition at the moment, 330,000 was what it was back in 2020. The market's gone up. I think it should be worth at least 350, 360 now. By 2025, it will be at least 400,000. And that's just my first one. I've got a number of other properties like that where I've seen this happen, and I've certainly experienced this doubling every 10 years. Now, I've got some properties that I bought at the peak of 2007. I bought some new builds. I bought some apartments. Guess what? It was no money down. Seemed like a good idea at the time, right? Having had my time again, if I could, I've got some deals that I wouldn't buy again because I know quite a bit more now than I knew at the time. But we make decisions at the time based on the knowledge we have. All of you who are investing at the moment, the properties you bought already were based on the knowledge you had at that time. And so by being here and coming to events like this, you're increasing your awareness and the level of knowledge, and you should be doing better deals all the time because of the increased knowledge you're taking on, right? So I'd like you to work out, what would your first house be? Assuming you bought a house some while ago, what would it be worth right now? So think about it, write it down in your workbook. You might know exactly, you maybe guesstimate how much that is, but think about that. Write it down. How much do you think that would be worth now? And at home, please do the same. Now, I'm going to ask you a question. At home, I'd love to see your hands go up if this is for you. And in the room, I'm going to ask you a question. And that is this. If someone had told you, when you bought your first house, if someone had told you just how much it would be worth today, my question is, would you have found it very difficult to believe them? Yeah, stick your hand up if you just wouldn't believe how much it's worth today. Stick your hand up, okay? On screen as well, yeah? We're saying, so think about your first house, and if someone told you how much it would be worth today, you just wouldn't believe them. Well, that's the same. You know, if you had told me my first house, I was buying in 98, I said, Simon, you should get a few more of these, because in 20 years or 30 years, it's going to double and double and double again. I would have said, get out of here. There's no way, you're nuts. Take this person away, they're crazy. But that's what happens in this country. So even if you come in and feel, well, it's expensive, and it is expensive now. Of course it is. It's more now than it was before. But if you're holding long term, you know, assuming you want to be in property 10, 20, 30 years, looking around, I'm not sure some of you are going to make it that long. That's a little joke. That's a little joke. I was watching some Ricky Gervais last night, and he's very rude to his audience, so that's why. Maybe I was a little bit cheeky there, but still. No, but seriously, somebody should go to a doctor, I think. You know. But anyway, but hopefully we're going to be here a long time, right? I'm not sure if I'm concerned or worried, actually. Do we need a few ambulances here? But so, are we going to be around a long time, hopefully? Yeah. By the way, I'm going to digress slightly, if that's okay. Is it okay if I digress? Yeah, okay. So one of the groups I'm in is a coaching group, a business coaching group. And there's a guy who runs that called Dan Sullivan. And he has this thing called the Life Extender. And it's all about thinking, how long, when am I going to die? And sometimes we have beliefs about how old we're going to live to. And I want you to think about that. I want you to write down something on your page. Are we going to do this exercise right now? I think it's going to be valuable. Yeah, okay. So get a blank piece of paper and write down, I hope or expect to live to what age, okay? Just write that down. Do this at home, guys, as well. I hope or expect to live to this age. This is pretty important, by the way, because when you're thinking about your financial future, you want to make sure you have enough money to last for your life, right? So have we all written down an age we expect to live to? And often it's based on maybe how old our parents were, etc., and things like that. Or maybe we've had some health scares, etc. So just shout out some ages. How long do you want to live to? 120, I heard. Who's going to live to over 100? Wow, we're split. Most of this side of the room are saying, and I don't know what you guys are doing, but now, you might have said 80, you might have said 100, or whatever you said. Think about the age you're at. So listen very carefully to what I'm going to ask you. And I want you to all, and at home, participate as well here, okay? So let's say you said 90. Let's say you said 90, okay? And I used to have in my head an idea about 90. And I said, I'm definitely going to live over 80, because at 80 you get a free ski pass. I definitely want to be using free ski passes, all right? Skiing is one of my favorite things. So I'm going to make sure the knees are still intact, and I might be going a bit slower than I do now, but I'm going to be skiing definitely well into my 80s. So kind of 90 was what I thought. And then I heard Dan talking about this. He said, okay, so let's say it's 90. So in that final year, let me ask you, how do you hope your health is going to be? Good? Hope your health's going to be good, right? By then, hopefully, how do you think your finances are going to be? Good. If you've invested and built up a portfolio, it should be pretty good, right? Okay. How do you think your social life, your friends are going to be? Some of them might be dead. Some of them might be dead, yes. But hopefully, here's a big tip. Dan Sullivan, he said a lot of his friends are younger than him. So so he wants to make sure they're not all dying out, right? Because which is kind of smart, right? You know, my father's no longer here, unfortunately. My mother, touch wood, she was yesterday, so she's definitely still here. And she's going to be 80 this year, okay? And hope she's going to live many years. But some of her friends are starting to die out, right? So on a serious note, you probably want to have some younger friends as well. But assuming that's the case, so hopefully your health, in your final year, your health's going to be pretty good, right? Yeah, you're going to have some money, right? Hopefully you're going to have some friends, people you can connect with, family, right? Okay, so you've got a reason to live, right? So what's the difference between 90 and 91? Is it suddenly all going to go downhill? Well, probably not. So maybe you could live longer than 90, or whatever the age you wrote down was. And so Dan said he was watching this TV program, and it was talking about, and I think he's in his 70s now, and it was talking about people who were born at the end of the last century and who were going to live through the entire 1900s. Yeah? And he thought, wouldn't it be amazing to live through an entire century? That'd be cool, wouldn't it, right? Imagine the changes you'd see. And he suddenly thought that, you know, being someone who was born kind of around the wartime, he thought, oh, actually, I'm a disadvantage here because I'm already like 40 years into this. So he worked out he had to live 141 years, I think it was, for him to be able to live through an entire century. So that's what he said. And everything he does, that's his expectation, that's his belief, right? And so I think I worked, and I think I got to 100, I have to be 127 or something to be able to live through at least a full century, okay? So my opportunity, my encouragement to you is maybe think about living a bit longer. Now, obviously, our bodies might have a bit of wear and tear over that time, and there are things we can do to look after ourselves. So, you know, for example, I don't know why I'm telling you this, but my wife looks a lot younger than me, and she is younger than me, but she's done all sorts of things. And one thing she did when she was very young was beauty therapy, etc. So she looks after her skin, and now she's got me putting all this stuff on my skin. And I think I probably look younger than I am. You're supposed to agree at that point. I'm 51. I don't look 51, do I? Oh, you don't, Simon. that was a set. But the point is, we can do things to look after ourselves. And, you know, you should look after yourself. I did one on, who listens to my podcast? That's not enough of you, by the way. I did one a couple of weeks ago called Your $1 Million Racehorse. Yeah? Do you listen to that? Yeah. And you are like a $1 million racehorse. Because people buy $1 million racehorses because they go and race and they win races, right? And they win races, they make money, and then eventually they put them out to stud and they produce other champion racehorses, okay? If you had $1 million racehorse, you'd want to look after that $1 million racehorse, wouldn't you? Because it can make you lots of money, okay? You'd give it the best trainer. You'd give it the best diet. You'd make sure it had comfortable stables and things, yeah? You would spoil that racehorse, wouldn't you? Wouldn't you, yeah? Well, you're like that racehorse. You have got the capacity to earn incredible amounts of money. And I know some of it's not about the money, but guess what? If you're a wealthy person, you're in a much better position to help other people. One of my mentors, not around anymore, Bob Proctor, he would say, if you want to help the poor, make sure you're not one of them. And when you get on a plane, you know, we have that safety announcements. What do they say in the event of oxygen supply disappear? What happens? The yellow oxygen mask drop down, and what should you do? Put your one first. So you need to, financially speaking, look after yourself first. And it's not selfish, it's selfless, because if you look after yourself, you can then help your family, your loved ones, and other people. Does that make sense? Yes. And some people really struggle with this idea of making money because they think money is the root of all evil. Well, you know, money is not going to make you evil. Money is just going to amplify. If you're already evil, yes, you're going to be super evil if you make lots of money. But if you're a good person, you're going to be even better because you can help more people. Does that make sense? Yeah? So it's not the money that's the problem. It's you is the problem, or not, as the case hopefully is. But your duty, your destiny is to go out and create wealth. Because if you create wealth, you hopefully will spend some of that wealth, which is good for the economy, which is good for businesses, which is good for employment. So you should make money and not have a problem spending it. I have no problem spending it, and my wife is really good at spending it. My wife tells me she's making me richer by spending lots of our money. Somehow that kind of makes sense, but still. But it's good to spend money, right? But you have to have money to spend money. Who gets what I'm saying here? Yeah? So it's your duty to look after yourself and provide. I don't know how I got on that track, but anyway. Age, yeah. And so if you're going to live to 120 or 127, you might need more money to support you in that old age. Yeah? And hopefully, you want to start. And a lot of people think, I'm going to retire at 65, 70, whatever. I can never retire. I can never stop because I love what I do, right? I'm always doing something like this. But people work all their lives and they get to the point where they retire. And sometimes their health is not as good and they can't do all the things like the travel, etc. they want to do. So my encouragement to you is seize this opportunity that we have in the market, these great opportunities we're going to have to get in, buy great cash flowing assets, build up your cash flow, and then you could choose how you spend the rest of your life. And so whether you do it in a year or two, most people are a mastermind, they don't hit the 50,000 in the first year. About 70% of people get there in the second year because sometimes you've got to get out your own way and sometimes deals take a bit of time, etc. But in the next year or two, if you wanted, you could completely replace your income. Who'd be pretty excited by that? But you need to understand, it is a reality, but you need to make the commitment first of all, decide it's going to happen. And decide what you want to do with your life. We talked, remember yesterday we got to close your eyes and think about what would life be like if you'd got all your property goals. And that's what you want to start thinking, your future vision. We'll cover more of this tomorrow. Your future vision is really important. You want to start imagining you're there already, okay? So relating it back to this, bringing it back on track, back in the room, is you are this racehorse. You can create all this wealth. And what you learn, you can apply for the rest of your life. So you need to really look after yourself and make sure you're planning for the future. And if you're going to be living a long, I know where I got to, because I thought some of you were looking a bit ropey, might not make 20, 30 years. That's what I was saying. But hopefully we're all going to live at least 50 years then. We're going to live to over 100, right? Therefore, property prices are going to go up and up and up and up and up over our lifetimes. Does that make sense? Yes. So I know it's expensive now, and we might see a little bit of a dip down, but everyone pretty much yesterday was saying, look, we've got the strong underlying demand, long-term price is going to go up, but now is the opportunity to do this. So, although prices seem high now, when you bought your first one, they seemed high. If people had told us how much they would go up to, we wouldn't have believed them. I'm telling you, long term here, prices are going to go up because we live on this island with a limited amount of accommodation and an increasing population. But now is the time you want to get in and you want to do this right now, okay? Because imagine if you had another, say, 10 of those first houses you bought. How many of you would be completely financially secure, more money than you could dream of, if you'd bought 10 houses back when you bought your first one? Yeah? Power of hindsight, right? But you need to understand, you need to get doing this now. I know people who have been expecting the prices to be crashing for the last 5 years. They've not bought anything for 5 years, and they've missed 5 years of incredible growth. Okay? So that's the message I'm trying to get to you. Over the long term, property prices will continue to go up due to supply and demand. That's not going to be the same everywhere around the world, but because we have this increasing demand here, that's the case for the UK. I do hope you got massive value from watching this YouTube video. I'd encourage you to click on the link below to come and do the online training with me. And I've got another video lined up for you, which I think is also going to be really useful that you should watch once you've registered for the online training with me. So invest with knowledge, invest with skill. I'll see you very soon.